Mr. Coley, if you would note that all the commissioners are present today.
So noted.
We have circulated the October 18 minutes. If anybody has any changes to those, let us know. Otherwise, do I have a motion and a second to approve?
Second.
All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
We have a presentation today that is going to cover two resolutions. Those are resolutions 1387 and 1388, and we'll be voting on each of those separately after the presentation. Resolution 1387 provides for housekeeping updates to our natural gas contracting authority policy, and Resolution 1388 provides for housekeeping updates to our natural gas risk management policy. So I'm going to be engaging in more housekeeping today than I have in a long time. Okay.
Commissioners, that's a mouthful too. Commissioners, every so often we review a lot of our policies to make sure they're up to date and current. And as Chair Herbert just mentioned, we found two that need to be updated for housekeeping reasons. And so I'd like to introduce Sherry Ottinger, Manager of Rates, to give you those updates. And then when she's finished with that, she'll also give you an update on the energy usage bill that we talked about last month.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Last month, I did update you on KUB's compliance with Resolution 970. And at the conclusion of that presentation, I mentioned that we were planning to come back in November with a few changes. And so today, we are recommending just a few minor updates to the Gas Contracting Authority and also to the Natural Gas Price Risk Management Policy. So just to start with the Gas Contracting Authority, this policy governs KUB's purchase of natural gas supply, transportation, and storage contracts. And so the natural gas industry deregulated in the early 1990s. And so as a result of that, if you look back in history, you will see that there were several KUB board resolutions during that time of transition. The first resolutions granted temporary contracting authority just for 1 year at a time until a long-term policy was established in 1995. And that is the policy that you are familiar with. It delegated certain levels of authority to the KUB senior management, but the board retained authority over large volume contracts and also long-term contracts. So then during the mid-1990s, there were a number of board resolutions that came before you over such long-term and large volume contracts. And then in 1998, all prior resolutions were consolidated into Resolution 970. That resolution has served us very well. In fact, so well that it's 20 years later, and we just have a very few updates to it. So the changes that we have to this policy, the first one is to remove an obsolete business title, which is Senior Vice President, Marketing Services. Obsolete titles do have some potential to create a little bit of confusion, particularly when we're undergoing a risk assessment or an audit. So we recommend removing this title. And then secondly, the policy includes a list of company names in the section that addresses off-system purchases and sales of natural gas. So some of these companies over the past 20 years, as you can imagine, they have changed their name. In one case, the facility actually changed ownership. So we want to update those names. We also want to add Middle Tennessee Natural Gas to the list. Middle Tennessee is very similar to KUB. They are a local distribution company. They purchase from multiple suppliers, but most importantly, they are scheduling gas on the East Tennessee Natural Gas Pipeline on a daily basis, just like KUB is. So those are the changes that we had for Gas Contracting Authority. And then for the Gas Price Risk Management Policy, this policy governs the use and provides guidelines on what we call supplier price locks or hedges, and also on some other price risk management tools. So as we look at how deregulation affected us, the first step was to ensure reliable supply and to get those contracts in order. But our very next step was to consider managing price risk on behalf of our customers. And so this policy was established in 1997. There were some housekeeping updates to it in 2004, but it has had no other changes since that time. And so again, with the price risk management policy, we have a short list of changes we would recommend. It also includes an obsolete business title, which is Vice President Business Services. And then it includes a couple of other titles that really are not used throughout KUB. They are used only in reference to that policy. So we would recommend removing all three of those titles. And then as we do that, those titles are listed as being members of the Price Risk Committee. And so in its stead, we would propose just providing the President and CEO flexibility in appointing members to the committee on an as-needed basis. And then there are just a few other changes throughout the policy that are for the purposes of clarification. So in summary, we would request that the board would approve these changes to these two policies. Resolution 1387 is for gas contracting authority, and Resolution 1388 addresses the price risk management policy. So do we have any questions?
The first resolution we'll take up, Commissioners, is Resolution 1387 on first and final reading. Do I have a motion and a second for approval of that resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any visitors here that want to address Resolution 1387? If not, then Mr. Coley, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Askew.
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Pennell.
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Small.
Aye.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
Resolution 1387 is passed.
The second resolution that we'll take up is Resolution 1388 on first and final reading. Do I have a motion and a second to approve that resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any visitors here that want to address Resolution 1388? If not, Mr. Coley, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Askew.
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Pennell.
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Small.
Aye.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
Resolution 1388 is passed.
And now we'll hear the President's report.
Commissioners, as you recall, we have committed to doing a cost of service study for each of our 4 utilities. This past year, we finished the electric cost of service study, and you saw that in the spring. We've just now gotten the result of the gas cost of service study. I'd like to ask Mike Boland, Vice President of Utility Transformation, to present it. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm not normally still standing up here.
I'm new, still new to the job.
As Mr. Bolus previously mentioned, last month during the winter update presentation, we showed you some slides on residential bills. And as I understand it, that generated a few questions. So we did want to provide you today just with a look back on some of our historical energy bills. So starting with the natural gas bills, this chart goes back to fiscal year 2011. And you may recall that is just prior to when we began Century 2 funding. So that's why we picked that date. And then it runs through last year, fiscal year 2018. So in fiscal year 2011, the average gas bill for all KUB residential customers was $58. And then when we look at this past year, fiscal year 18, the bill was $57. You can see that there are lower amounts and there are higher amounts for the years in between, but fairly similar throughout. Then as we move and look at the electric bills, we see even more consistency across the electric bills. For fiscal year 2011, the average bill for all KUB residential customers per month was $119.20. And as we look at fiscal year 2018, that amount is 10 cents higher. That bill was $119.30. And so then, just in case you wanted to see the electric and the natural gas amounts combined, we have this consolidated chart for your review. So do we have any questions?
Sherry, those aren't adjusted for weather, are they?
No.
That's just the actual total bills divided by the total number of customers?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
So some of those dips are probably warmer winters and perhaps.
Could warmer, colder winters,
Yeah.
warmer, colder summers
Right, yeah.
as well. So a lot of factors go into that overall composite.
Okay.
So,
Do you ever, when you're doing these charts, factor in inflation? What
We
it
have.
would be with normal inflation?
Yes, we have certainly taken a look back at inflation. Typically, we would do that during the long-range plan review is a typical time when we would kind of take that longer view, as we take longer views during that time with the capital programs, and we dive a little bit deeper.
Right.
But we certainly-
$2011 are different than $2018.
Yes, absolutely. Inflation is a powerful factor.
Yeah.
So. Any other questions?
That's really helpful. Because I think seeing that visually makes a huge difference, and it basically shows that we've been pretty static, really and truly, for 7 years. So this notion that, you know, there's been a 300% increase is just totally false. Is that correct?
I think when you are looking at the total bill, yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very helpful. And now.
I've already been introduced, so I might. So, anyway, I'm here today to talk about gas cost of service study. You may recall that getting ready for the upcoming discussions about our financial planning to continue the Century 2 investments upcoming this next year, that the board and staff got together and agreed that prior to doing that, it would be helpful if each of our systems had a cost of service study conducted to help guide some of the discussions around the potential financial decisions made on the next long-range plan, the next set of discussions about adjustment of rates. In order to do that, we contracted with Utility Financial Solutions to come in and help perform these studies on our cost of service studies on our utility systems. Utility Financial Solutions, or UFS, is a very large cost of service rate design firm, one of the largest in the United States. They conduct a lot of training as well. Their members are doing training sessions for different associations around the country at all times. In fact, that's where we met the firm and the principals of the firm. The main principal, the president of the firm, Mark Beauchamp, has been doing cost of service studies for over 30 years, has over 40 years experience in the utility business, and he actually has personally been involved in our studies. So I feel really good that we've got the right expertise here to conduct the studies. The first study we did was on the electric system. You may recall I presented the results of that cost of service study back in March and presented that to the board. We also put the results of that study on our website for public review, and still is sitting there today if anybody has desire to see it. I'm here today because we've recently completed our gas system cost of service study, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. But I want to remind you that we will also be conducting a cost of service study on our water and wastewater system, probably the spring time frame, with a tentative presentation to the board on that in June. Just like the electric cost of service study, as we can conduct and finish all these other cost of service studies, we will put them on our website as well. So, a cost of service study. A cost of service study is where we take and determine the cost KUB incurs to provide service to various classes of customers. And then we compare those costs to what we're collecting in rates to make a comparison between the cost of service and what we're collecting. The The methodology of doing that is to some extent a big accounting exercise, honestly. What we do is we take the revenue requirements, or our budget, how much we need to fund operations. We take and divide that at the start in two different categories. The first one is gas supply. The second one is the distribution costs. Gas supply is the cost of the buying natural gas, storing natural gas, and transporting natural gas to Knoxville. Distribution costs are the cost of O&M, cost of investments in our systems, cost of meters, the cost of basically everything else other than gas supply. So you start by dividing your costs in those two big pots. Then you take those and you further divide them into, or allocate them into, classify them into customer-related charges, energy-related charges, or demand-related charges. After you've done that, you take and divide those into various customer classes based on allocation factors. Those allocation factors may be things like the number of customers in some cases. It may be a factor of the peakiness of their demand. Are they very low and then all of a sudden they peak up? It's kind of a load factor is a terminology used for that. Or the seasonality of the use. Are they just one season or do they use gas year round? So a lot of different factors go into ultimately turn all this into costs that are assigned to the customer classes. Then finally, the final thing is then to compare that calculated cost of service with what we are recovering from our customers. This chart shows the top level results of the cost of service study. You'll notice that it has both the cost of service as calculated as well as what our current rates are projected to recover. There's a column here called percentage change. The percentage change, if it's a positive number, indicates that we're currently under recovering what our cost of service would say. For example, in the case of residential customers, it says we're under recovering by about 9% from what the cost of service would indicate we should be recovering. Conversely, a negative number says that we're over recovering our cost of service. And so, as in the case of the small commercial customers here, it indicates we're over recovering what our costs are by about 17%. If you go on down to our largest non-standard customers being customers that first of all, not very many of them, but they're customers that we have the right to interrupt their gas on cold days to help manage their system, or they're customers who are procuring their gas from somebody besides us, and all we are doing is redelivering the gas to them. In the case of those customers, their cost and the cost of service is pretty close together.
Somebody,
Yes.
I don't know if this is time for questions now, but when you look at the under recoveries and the over recoveries, are the under recoveries an issue or something that you try to address or correct, or because it all balances out at the end, we don't see it as a big issue? So how do you take that into consideration?
The whole purpose of a cost of service study is to help provide guidance as we ultimately make funding and rate decisions. It really is just information for us to use to help guide us make decisions. Any particular number doesn't mean you need to run to where everything's zero across here.
Right.
It does give you an indication, though, as you're facing decisions, a factor that you need to take into consideration as you're making those decisions. And in further answer to your question, honestly, what you see here of basically an under recovery of costs in the residential side, a little over recovery costs in the commercial side, is consistent probably across the industry.
Okay.
And if I were to pull up our electric cost of service study that I presented last March, it looked almost exactly the same way. That's just kind of, there's a whole lot more factors than just the cost that run into rate making, if you will. So if we then go down a little further, this slide shows you in a little more detail some of the components that the cost of service would say are the appropriate way and appropriate costs that are associated with customers. In addition to that, there's also a column here for our current basic service charges. So for example, in the residential classification, it says the cost of service would say we ought to have a basic service charge, customer charge of about $21, whereas our current customer charge is about $10. So almost a 50% increase, or half of what it otherwise would be, is what this study would indicate. On the other hand, let me see if I can figure out how to work this. Well, I don't want to get my laser working, but the residential commodity rate here is showing us 82 cents. What we're currently charging residential customers is 95 cents. So we're undercharging today, if you will, on the customer charge versus the cost of service, and we're overcharging residential customers today on the commodity charge based upon the customer service. So in total, you know, we're charging still about 9% less than what the cost of service would stay for residentials, but it does have that effect, the difference between are you collecting it in the customer charge, or you collecting it in the commodity charge. Conversely, you can look at the small commercial customers. In the small commercial customers case, you know, it would indicate we're under collecting in the basic service charge there as well. But on the other hand, the previous page said that we were over collecting in total by 17%, which means by definition we've got to be charging a whole lot more in the commodity charge right now than what's considered probably appropriate under the cost of service strict definition. So as you go through here, I guess the things that I would note should be noted on this. And in all cases, we're significantly under collecting our basic fixed customer charge. So what is and what goes into our basic service charge? Basically, a basic service charge has two major components. The first component is what is the investment needed to have a minimum delivery of service to a customer. So the second thing being what are the direct charges that can be allocated to the customer. The minimum system charges, or minimum design cost charges, are where we take, the engineers and accountants take our system that consists of a lot of different pipes and says what's the smallest pipe we could use throughout our whole system to deliver 1 unit of volume to a customer. No matter what happens, if all you want to do is just have the availability of taking 1 therm of gas, we have to have a certain size pipe to give you that 1 therm of gas. So in the case of the gas system, a 2-inch size pipe, we would basically redesign our whole system using only 2-inch size pipe, not 4-inch, not 6-inch, not 8-inch, not 12-inch, no steel. We do a theoretical computation of what it would take on a minimum system design of what it would take to have the investment sitting there ready to serve customers when they demand service. The second component is a more direct assignment of cost, whether it's the cost of the meter, cost of meter reading, cost of customer service, cost of the service line from our main to their house. All those type of direct costs to the customers are the two different components that go into basic service charge. And honestly, that would be the same methodology, the same inputs that you would have on any utility services. It's not unique to just the gas here. So if we look at what the cost of service study indicated as the components of the cost and the actual cost associated with the basic service charge for residential customers are shown right here. The biggest piece is $13.39, I think, yep. That is associated with just having the infrastructure there sitting ready for a customer to take service. And that, again, that's just to provide 1 minimum level of service to that customer. The rest of the various charges add up to about $8. Then collectively they add up to $21.25 for the cost of service related basic service charge. Again, if you compare that to what we're currently charging, of $10.15, you can see we're currently charging about half of what a cost of service study would say you ought to be charging. So, what's the takeaway from all this? First of all, our results are similar, as I indicated earlier, to most other utilities. There's typically, on a cost of service basis, a under collection of costs from residentials and over collection of costs from commercials, kind of universal. Secondly, I think it's interesting that it's really the same and the same results as our electric system. Okay. Third thing, I think we showed that all of our basic service charges are less than what the cost of service would say those basic service charges ought to be. And then finally, I didn't talk about this, but one of the things the consultants noted was that our investment in our system overall per customer, if you will, were higher than what their average that they typically see. Our system is about 37% depreciated. The average system is about 50% depreciated. So they could pick up, just in their analysis, our continued investments in the systems we've been making through Century 2. So it was interesting they were able to pick that up and identify it as part of the system. So we have a larger investment on the books today than most gas systems.
Mike, is that
Yes, ma'am.
showing up in, was that showing up in the O&M line?
No, ma'am, it's actually in the capital investment. It's the amount of capital invested per customer.
Okay,
It's
so
non-depreciated.
If you go back a line,
Yes, ma'am.
or back a slide,
Mhm.
where is that showing up? Is that,
It would probably mainly show up right here, distribution customer mains. All of this is just a basic service charge, not what happens. Everything, all of our costs that aren't recovered here are recovered through the commodity rate. So there's lots of other costs that are
Right.
recovered through the
but some of that.
Some of that is-
capital investment would be in there.
Yes, ma'am.
And it would be in the first line.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Mike, were there any surprises to you all from this study? Was there something that you learned that you didn't know before?
I don't think so. Ms. Ottinger was involved as well. Was you?
Was the last one 2 years ago?
The
Cost of service study was,
some time ago.
yeah, that was what I was gonna say.
Yeah, yeah.
A long time ago.
1996 or so was
Yeah.
the last, 1996.
Yeah, I don't think that there was anything too surprising. I do think the capital investment part of what you might see that, if you'll remember, we recently completed the South Loop, so that was a major project. That, again, because the minimum system is designed on 2-inch pipe, that would not be part of that 1339.
Right.
But I would say the South Loop is a key factor in that, so.
Even with this system investment that's larger than the average system that the consultants usually see, if you look at our rates versus surrounding utilities, you'll see that our rates on this particular slide were the second lowest. But the reality is we're all pretty close together, you know. But the bottom line is that our rates are competitive as we look at our peers today. You will notice that our customer service charge, or basic service charge of $9.40 during this particular time frame is higher than the others, which probably is a reflection of our larger investment in Century 2 items than our peers.
But the overall, but the overall cost is not detrimentally affected. I mean, in fact, the usage, $48.99 is the lowest of the second lowest, sorry. Yeah, it's the lowest, actually.
Yeah. But we're all close. But we are competitive.
And you're saying that the basic usage charge is actually the service charge is less than it could be because we're under recovering.
Yes. Yes. Less than what a cost of service study would say.
Right, gotcha, yeah.
And finally, if we look on a national basis, this is an American Gas Association study that was conducted. I think there were 66 utilities across the United States that we looked at. Looked at our basic service charge at this time of $9.40 versus the survey average of $15.15. You see we're well below average on the basic service charge. So at the end of the day, the cost of service study provides us some guidance that we'll take into consideration when we have discussions a year or so from now about the appropriate actions that may be indicated as part of the financial planning for the next set of Century 2 discussions that we'll have. With that, that's the end of my presentation. I'll remind you that when this study and our future studies on water and wastewater, they'll be back in the spring to talk to you about. We'll put that on the board, on the website, so everybody can see them. And we'll be back, unfortunately, for you and Jim probably, to talk about the same thing for water and wastewater. So I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Mike. That's very informative.
Thank you.
Commissioners, we have been talking for the last year about the largest and last project in the consent decree, the biologically enhanced highway clarification project. That project is about to begin, and so we want to give you an update on the progress and the project itself and some of the details. And so I can introduce Billy Joe McCarley, Director of Engineering, to give you that presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles. Gabe. Good afternoon, Commissioners. As Gabe said, I'd like to give you an update on the composite correction plan at KUB, otherwise known as, I will call it BEHRC, or Biologically Enhanced High Rate Clarification. No test. So we have already, like I said, you've heard about the project, and we've actually started construction. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the scope of the project, our project team, and some of the community impacts and identified keys to success. Just want to draw your attention to this picture here. This is a conceptual view of what you will see at the completion of this project on the south side of Nayland Drive. So we started the Phase 10 program as part of the consent decree. We took a three-step approach. The first step was to try to keep the wastewater inside the pipes and the rainwater from getting inside. And we did that through rehab and replacement programs of our pipes in the collection system. To date, we have upgraded 30% of our pipes, and as part of our Century 2 program, we will continue to methodically upgrade these pipes inside of our system. The second step was to install storage tanks. These storage tanks were to hold wastewater during our heavy rain events, and that was either to keep us from having an overflow downstream or to provide peak shaving at the wastewater plants. And then the last project, which we're talking about here today, is to provide full treatment capacity at our Fourth Creek and Kawaki wastewater treatment plants. I'm happy to say that we've completed the Fourth Creek project, and then this project is where we will increase our full treatment capacity from 70 MGD to 120 MGD. You can imagine we're essentially doubling the full treatment capacity at Kawaki in that small footprint.
What does MGD stand for?
Million gallons a day.
Okay.
So these last couple of days, our operators have done a great job of keeping the flow treated inside the treatment plants. As Gabe said, this is the final consent decree project, and this is the largest consent decree project. I would challenge us to say this may be the largest capital improvement project in KUB's history. I'm a little jealous of the project team, but they'll do a great job. So our project team. I think we've assembled a really good project team. CDM Smith has been our partner throughout the whole course of the Phase 10 program, and even before we started Phase 10. They've got a global design experience, and they're able to help us provide solutions to some of these tough challenges. Our contractor that was selected is Blaine Construction, and they're $1 billion company. And so for them, this is just like, we do this all over the country, so they're ready for a project this magnitude. And internal to KUB, we have assembled experienced project managers. In addition to that, we have skilled operators, maintenance staff, and communication that will be helping to, they'll be meeting weekly actually right now to stay ahead of any projects, challenges that we're going to see along the way. As I said, we have already started this project. We awarded this project to Lane in August. They mobilized first shovel in the ground in October, and they're scheduled to complete this project in December of 2020. This will give us a 6-month buffer from our EPA consent decree deadline. We have not missed a deadline yet, and we will not miss this one. Right out of the gate, we had a huge win. We had 3 pre-qualified bidders, pre-selected bidders as part of an RFQ process, and all of those bids were very close to one another. They were within $5 to $6 million, but our low bid was $39 million. Once you add your engineering, inspection, and contingency, we still expect to be 5% below our project budget, and on a $50 million budget, that's not pennies. I'd like to talk a little bit about what this project really means. $40 million is a lot of work. This map right here shows a site map of Kauai wastewater treatment plant, and I think most everybody's had an opportunity to visit this site. We really have 3 small projects as part of a much larger $40 million project. The first part will be a 24-inch pipeline that will run east to west on the north part of the plant. It's already a tight area, so coordination and safety will be key for this success. The second part will be bar screens. Right now we have 4 bar screens. 2 of those bar screens will be upgraded. We need to actually have smaller screening size, and that'll be the first line of defense for the wastewater coming into the plant to get some of the solids out of it before further processing on with the BEHRC. The lion's share of the work will be on the south side of Nayland Drive, and you can see that yellow box right there, and that's where the real process will come in. Most everybody has been to Fourth Creek and they have seen the HRC or BEHRC process. It'll be a very similar technology, really the same technology, on the south side of Nayland Drive. Before we do this work and major construction activities occur, we have a pipeline project where we'll be upgrading the wastewater trunk line, actually rehabbing, so it won't be excavation. And that'll happen from Third Creek on to the headworks of the plant, and we'll also be upgrading the water line from Third Creek to Joan Cronin Way. We expect to be done with that project in January. Anytime you do a $40 million project, or any work we really do, since we impact the public so much, it's going to have an effect on our public. And that will be through traffic, and it'll also be with our greenway. So the first project we really have starts in November, and it's going to go November, December, January. And what will happen is the pipeline work, this greenway right here, and that will go from Third Creek to Lake Loudon Boulevard will be shut down. In addition to that, as we reconnect our service laterals and whatnot, we will see some single lane closures, but we'll always keep traffic at least 1 lane open in either direction. Once we get in, once we get into more major construction activities with the BEHRC, and this will probably be late January into February, we'll actually see a permanent lane shift where there'll be 2 lanes going east and 2 lanes going west. We're able to do that by eliminating the center turn lane. You'll note that Joan Cronin Way, you'll still have traffic fully accessible. Close coordination has occurred with the University of Tennessee, City of Knoxville, and TDOT in making all of these plans. So when you're doing the project management on a day-to-day basis, it's so easy to get caught up in your day-to-day activities. What's happening where, what's the 6-inch pipe we didn't know about? But the project team has identified keys to success. And by keeping an eye on these keys to success, we hope that when we look at the 6-month plan, the 12-month plan, the 24-month plan, we'll keep an eye on these things. And that's, yes?
I have a question, sorry to interrupt. Can you go back to the last slide,
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any way to provide space along Nayland Drive for the greenway? A lot of people use that, and then they have really no option. I know there's going to be electronic message boards I read, but is there any way that we can provide a protected lane, even when it's, you know, when we're shifting Nayland?
We've actually had very good conversations with the city and the Greenway folks. Their preference was to not provide that detour route from a safety perspective. So I think the travelers are going to have to probably go through the University of Tennessee route. They mentioned earlier that the lanes are going to be shifted.
Yeah.
We're going to lose the middle lane. That means the shoulder is going to be tight. Their preference was not to have that as a detour route.
So the message boards will be other locations, so they don't even get that far. So if you're traveling along here, you're not surprised if you had...
On the Greenway?
Yeah.
Well, actually, again, we've been coordinating with the city of Knoxville. their preference was not to put signage up actually for a detour route alternative. We did have some significant conversations with them. Their preference was to not go that way.
So just people just turn around.
We are going to use our other communication avenues, though. We are getting with the associations that do the Greenway Coalition. I can't remember the names of some of those folks. We're getting in contact with them. We're going to have a blog site. We're going to have this on our website. So that's our means. The city chose not to.
Yeah.
We offered that alternative. They chose not to do that.
Thanks, Darrell.
Sure.
Well, I know my husband rides his bicycle, and he's griped before when we've had another project going that all of a sudden you're riding along and boom, you know, you don't have any direction, you don't have any kind of communication. I'm sure the city would rather that not happen, but if we're gonna have this shut down for a year, you know, there needs to be some sort of signage or something, because a lot of people use that greenway.
We'll share with them once again that the board has an interest in that and see if they would reconsider, because we're willing to do the work. It's just they own it.
I mean, I just think that's inconsiderate of the people that are riding. I would never ride my bicycle down there. I don't even have a bicycle, so I'm not worried about that. But,
We can put that on your Christmas list.
that's it. No, thank you. But it is, I mean, you know, one of the things that people love is they ride, a lot of folks ride down to, you know, Calhoun's and, you know, go through the South Knoxville Bridge that way. And I think that's going to be a huge impact. This winter, maybe not that bad, but come March or April, it's going to be major.
We will revisit that with them and let them know that the board has an interest in their reconsideration. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
One point of clarification, Commissioner, is November, December, January, when we do the pipeline work, the Greenway will be a hard close. Once we start construction activities, we will close the Greenway. We'll have crane activity in here, and any activities that compromise the safety of the Greenway is when we will close it, but we will not leave it closed for the duration of the project.
Oh, okay.
And to your point about how do we communicate with people, it is our intention to put a map, hopefully all the way back at, or a sign at Lake Loudon Boulevard, and also at Third Creek, when those are points of detour, and if they allow us, even up at Joe Johnson. Hope that map will be big enough that you can see the UT campus, and so it won't be a detour, but you'll have a map that you can come up with your own detour. And Volunteer Boulevard is really what we would recommend, but we brought this up, as Derwin said, to the city a couple times, and they're pretty firm on their stance right now.
So that's helpful to know that it's not going to be the entire duration of the project.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was an oversight on my part.
This is intermittent. It's hard to read that. Still, one day.
I'll follow up with both you. So as we identified the keys to success on this project, budget and schedule are key on any project, especially a project of this magnitude. As I've said before, the consent decree, EPA deadline, that's important. We haven't missed a date yet. We don't plan on missing it on this one. Safety, sometimes we forget, but we're going to maintain full operations at Kawhi over the course of this project. And so there's $40 million worth of work happening, and the operators still have to do their job, and they're still striving for permit compliance. And so every activity, safety will be key. Not only safety of KUB, contractor safety, and it's their responsibility to have a strong plan with us, and that's an expectation. What will be your safety plan on this project? And then lastly, public safety. And that's why the Greenway will be closed from time to time, is public safety. How do we do that? We do it through planning and communication. It's a key to success, but really communication is important to the success of all of these items. The project team will keep an eye on these items, and they'll also be doing periodic report outs to an oversight committee, mainly comprised of senior staff and a few other people, but anytime we kind of get off track just a little bit, they'll help provide direction, and there's a certain level of accountability as well. As with with most of our large projects, we will have a very proactive communication plan. We've already had 3 to 4 meetings with the University of Tennessee and their staff, City of Knoxville, TDOT, and actually all the communications we put out, UT will put this on their UT cone zone map as well, which is a new thing for us. We'll have project information sheets, we'll have our blog, we'll have our hotline for our customer service reps, and we'll also be using social media to keep the public informed of project status. So in conclusion, Commissioners, we recognize the magnitude of this project and the effect it will have on our community. We also realize the importance of hitting our schedule and budget on this project. And with the identified keys to success, this project team is ready for this challenge.
Question. Is there, does Kauai have any redundancy? Is there, so in other words, if there was a catastrophic accident of some kind during construction that caused a shutdown, is there redundancy in Fourth Creek? Could everything be diverted there? Or is it just we'd be down and have to get
For the
back?
most part, we'd be down. There may be some contingency we could have, but we'd really be down.
And the further, if that plant is so long, and, I mean, if one section goes down, there's still a lot of plant. You know, it'd be hard for the whole plant to be basically down at any point. I mean,
So
it's a
much
big-
capacity.
It's a big site, yeah.
Right, gotcha.
And one process may be down, not the whole plant.
Right, great.
One of the issues that I'm hearing from some folks is they are very concerned about the aesthetics. And so I would, that's a conceptual thing. I would love for us to really think hard about how we can make it as beautiful as possible using plants, using whatever means necessary. It's not a real pretty part of the river right now. I mean, you've got a cement plant right there beside it, but to whatever degree we can make it aesthetically pleasing, we have some expertise on the board in that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Hers was the expertise, yours was the beauty part. But I really do think we could go a long way. The second thing is, there's an old fundraising maxim some of you heard me use, that when you go to a hardware store to buy a drill, it's not because you need a drill, it's because you need a hole. And we need, if you're raising money for something, you always talk about the holes you're going to drill. I think part of our communication needs to be focused on the advantages to the public of having this facility, cleaner water, whatever all the advantages are, because otherwise it's just an inconvenience. It's another big building. It blocks the view of the river. It's all that. But we need to be telling the community about how their health is going to be improved, how their community is going to benefit, and really make that argument. So the plant's just a drill. The holes that are going to be drilled with it are really important holes.
And a court will drill us if we don't.
This is the
There is that.
This is the final consent decree project, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
That we don't have to continue
Lay
spending
it
that much
on the
money.
bed.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, about 9 days ago, we had a major storm blow through Knoxville on a very important day in American politics. So I want to ask John Gresham, Vice President of Operations, to give you a brief update on that storm.
Thank you, Gabe. Commissioners, as Mr. Bowles indicated, we did have a severe weather event that coincided with an election. And I've been doing this for about 30 years. That's a first in my experience. So we feel we had a very safe and very successful response. So I just wanted to share a little bit of data with you around this event. So you can see there the weather front, a snapshot of the weather front as it entered our service territory, right? And so we knew things were coming. We had a couple of days of notice with this, intelligence from the National Weather Service. So we began our response preparations a couple of days in advance of this. So that's pretty routine for us. What was not routine is the Knox County Election Commission reached out to us and expressed concern about possible power outages to voting locations. And that made a lot of sense, and they shared some good data with us. They shared, I think it was 65 to 70 locations across our territory that we took a look at. We had restoration plans developed prior to the storm, and we were ready. So 4 o'clock a.m., 4:30ish, the storm entered our system and began impacting what was going on. It was straight line winds, 60-mile-an-hour winds, ultimately manifested itself as tree damage, significant tree damage in our area, causing 32,000 customers to lose service. 18 circuit breakers interrupted at the peak of the storm, a big deal for us. Coincidentally, the preparation paid off. There were 9 voting locations that lost power, 1 in Granger County, 8 in Knox County. There were 4 others in Knox County served by Lenore City. But we dealt with ours, we were ready to deal with them, and by 9:30ish that very day, we had power back onto them, and the process proceeded as we expected to. And the Election Commission was happy with that from all indications. To give you a sense of the damage, that's a snapshot early in the process of our service territory and the outages. You can see it followed the interstate corridor and south. This was the area of major concern. Now, we had widespread issues, but that was the area where we saw substantial concern. So therefore, we responded with over 100 crews of various types to respond to the damage. And let me see if I can quote this correctly. It sounds like the 12 days of Christmas here, but 19 KUB line crews, 17 contract crews that we use regularly, 11 crews from our neighboring utilities, including Clinton, Oak Ridge, and Johnson City, 11 troubleshooters, 8 substation crews, 27 damage assessors, and I'm leaving somebody out, 15 tree crews are the primary resources that responded here. That is a lot of folks responding to this damage. In addition to that, we implemented our incident command structure that we've spoken with you folks about before. They commanded the event, and so there were numerous folks behind the scenes helping make this happen. So the 2 pictures you see here, the one on your left is pretty typical of what we ran into. Large trees on the ground, falling through our assets. In this picture, you can kind of see 2 poles leaning in. You can actually see a distribution transformer here about to fall off the pole. Obviously, to get back here, you've got to clean this up, so tree crews have to go first before the electrical workers can get there. And there were numbers of these that we saw across our service territory. The other picture is a pretty unique picture. This is down off Neyland Drive, right there at that, I think it's student apartments. But in the process, these wires here are part of our sub-transmission system, and we were having to manipulate that to restore service. This switch malfunctioned in the process of trying to manipulate it, so we had to respond to restore that. And what's unique about this is a 140-foot pole, okay? And so this is about 100 feet in the air. This is what our employees have to deal with when they're restoring in the midst of these events. You also take note, that's a beautiful picture, right? The storm is come and gone. So sometimes our customers forget bad things happen when the sun does come out, but a pretty unique event for us. We were very happy with the response of our crews and their performance during this event. They did really well. So you've seen this chart before, trying to compare events, and while this storm wasn't one of our larger events, it does merit conversation, if nothing more than the voting impact. But 32,000 customers, 35 poles replaced, 13 transformers replaced, 7,200 customer calls, 36 hours. We're real proud of that. 36 hours every customer was back in. And this number here on cost, don't get too caught up in that. That's a very preliminary number, and it's total costs. We're still in the processes of collecting some of that data, but probably about $800K. Incrementally, it's going to be less because our crews would have been here anyway. The storm hit a real good timing for us. But you can see how that compares to other storms, and we feel we had a really good response from that perspective.
Do you think in addition to it being less people affected, do you think the advanced meters helped on the phone calls?
I think it's a combination of things. I think you're exactly right. We're getting more and more meters out there and more automation, and those things do come in and report to the system, so we see them quicker. We also have some technology that's out there, the automated switches now, and they actually help considerably in a few of these key areas as well that help get customers on quickly to keep that down. I think the third aspect would probably really be the length of the storm. 18 hours or 36 hours is pretty quick. Customers are pretty tolerant about that, so they'll call less. If it would have gone into the second day, we would probably seen another rash of calls. But lastly, and to wrap up, our part of our communication strategy is to leverage social media now, and our communication staff is doing a wonderful job of getting restoration updates out there on social media and pictures so folks can see what we do. And these are just some samples of our community responding back to those posts, and they're all very positive and favorable. There's some words I really like here that I never thought I'd got to say in the board, but we're just freaking awesome. I'm not exactly sure what that means. And then we rock, so that's somebody thinks we rock. And then lastly, this didn't come in through social media, but Cliff Rogers with the Election Commission was very complimentary of the response, and we would have to reciprocate that. It was a good working relationship the first time we'd done it, and it went well. So what I like to say here is we think we did really well. We're very proud of our employees for serving our customers, and we're happy with the way this event went.
Great job, John.
Yeah.
Everybody at KUB, being forward-thinking and being prepared. I just don't think you can say enough about that because, you know, if you know bad things are about to happen, you had crews mobilized and ready to go, and luckily that thing swept through really pretty quickly, so you all could get out there and get on the restoration pretty darn quick.
Yes, well, thank you. And one thing in terms of that I failed to mention here, but we think we did well, but we know we can do better. So actually the response teams have already met, and we've got a handful of items that we think can make us better in the future. So internal communications is one of those. We probably don't tell our employees what's going on in the moment, so we desire to make that better so they can make their plans. If this had gone 2 or 3 days, that's very important to them. So we do circle back around and debrief after events like this and make ourselves better.
That's a really good thing because experience is the best teacher.
Agreed. So we get to practice this quite a bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's winter time, if you haven't noticed. And so with that being said, I've asked Tiffany Martin, Director of Customer Service, to give you an update on some of the weatherization programs that have been going on for a few years of the low-income customers. And so Tiffany, give us a slide.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I won't have the 12 days of storms, so that won't be as much fun, but I think what I'm going to talk about today is also very important. You all may recall that we came and spoke with you earlier in the year about our Rounded Up program. At that time, that program was nearing the end of its 3-year pilot, and through Resolution 1374, you all voted to make that a permanent program. So today I'm just going to talk a little bit about our weatherization efforts prior to that, what's going on today, and then hopefully what will continue in the future. You may be familiar with the Knoxville Extreme Energy Makeover. That is what we call KUB. That was a grant that was provided back in 2015, and that was $15 million that was provided through TVA to help with weatherization of low-income homes. And that program ultimately helped 1,278 homes be weatherized, and so those customers were able to benefit from lower energy costs as a result of that. That grant has actually ended. It ended in the fall of 2017. And so those funds are spent and those things have happened, but we are continuing with the Rounded Up program. The Rounded Up program, as you know, is a program where KUB customers voluntarily contribute funds by rounding up their bill to the next dollar. And those funds are passed on to the Knox County Community Action Committee, or CAC, to assist with weatherization of homes. And 100% of those dollars go to that program and go to CAC to be administered. Today, we've weatherized over 270 homes, and that our program, using funds from our customers, generally allows us to weatherize about 70 homes per year. So obviously, we've had a big impact with the program and with the support of our customer population. During the same time that we came and talked to you earlier in the year about Rounded Up, TVA had announced some additional funds that they had available to support the Rounded Up program with the Home Uplift Grant. And that grant provides $500,000 for the next 2 years, so this year and next, to support the Rounded Up program. And so those funds have started being administered through the CAC as well. And 90 of the 270 homes have benefited from the Home Uplift Fund. So as you can see, those dollars are already at work within our system and within our community. I mentioned that the Rounded Up funds are provided through customer participation, and we've been very fortunate, and our customers have really continued to help those neighbors that are in need. We have a 50% participation rate at this point, and we expect that will level at about 50% as customers start service with us. That is something that we ask them about on every transaction. Are you interested in helping your neighbors with this by rounding up to the next dollar? And about 50% say yes. So we feel like that this program will be sustained with those customer donations. Since 2015, when the program was initiated in May, $2.6 million have been raised. And as I mentioned earlier, 274 homes have been weatherized. So the program has been a success. Obviously, there are lots of homes in our community that aren't very energy efficient. So there are still lots of families and individuals that need that support. CAC maintains a waiting list. The last time that we talked with you, there were about 2,000 on the waiting list. So the Home Uplift funds have actually helped us reduce that waiting list. So that's great that we've had that additional grant to assist with those efforts. Let's talk just a little bit about impacts, because as you mentioned, Commissioner Ashton, it's about where you see the impact more than it is about the dollars sometimes. So collectively, for those customers, we've seen that on average, their average monthly bill is about 20% less than what it was before their homes were weatherized, which makes a big impact on a tight monthly budget. As well as those individuals that have benefited from KEEM and Rounded Up generally were some of those folks that needed to participate in Project Help or other emergency assistance for utility bills. Those requests have been reduced by 40% for that population. So it's definitely making an impact. And then with the funds from Rounded Up and the additional funds for Home Uplift, CAC has been able to triple the amount of homes that they're able to weatherize compared to the funds that they had available just through the Department of Energy previously. So obviously, these programs are making a tremendous impact. Knowing that the winter season was coming, we thought it'd be a good time to talk about this. Do you guys have any questions?
Now, great news, Tiffany, with all the work that's being done and the folks that are being served through these different programs. And we're very, very blessed to have gotten that TVA grant to kind of keep some of that momentum going.
Absolutely, absolutely. And beyond just the financial impacts, when we talked earlier in the year, we talked specifically about some customers, and a lot of them really commented on just the comfort that they feel in their homes now. And I think that makes a big difference as well. Is my bills are lower and I feel comfortable and I'm enjoying my home much more than I did before.
Absolutely.
Once somebody opts out of a project,
Yes.
Rounded Up, is there a period of time where we go back and send them information, ask them to reconsider, or is it just kind of a?
Today, we generally, if someone calls us and asks to opt out, we of course ask, why they'd like to opt out. We do explain the program again. But ultimately, if they've decided to not opt in, we haven't done any campaign to re-sign up those individuals. We do have a lot of content on our website just about the impacts, and we hope that information will help encourage them at some point to reapply. But we don't currently have a campaign today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Are there any other business? There are several members of the public that has signed up to address us today. If you have never addressed us before, there is a light now on the podium. You've got 5 minutes to make your comments. When you have 1 minute left, there'll be a yellow light on the podium that goes on. And then when your time is up, the red light will go on. Our first member of the public that wants to address us today is Jennifer Dunn. And Jennifer, if you would state your address when you come up so we'll know where you live.
Hi everyone, so I'm Jennifer Dunn. My address is 7004 East Harbor Trace Lane. And so I'm here to talk to you today about fixed fees. And like I said, my name's Jennifer Dunn. I just moved here to Knoxville a couple months ago. I relocated from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where I got my PhD in environmental and energy policy. And so what I want to talk to you today about is the issue of fixed fees and high electricity bills. So prior to moving to Knoxville, I lived in the UP, what we call the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So I was a UBer for some time. And so the UP had the highest price per kilowatt hour of electricity in the nation besides Hawaii. And on average, we paid 23 to 25 cents per kilowatt hour, which was higher than 67% of the rest of Michigan. And because of the area in which I lived, the area struggled, the economy struggled, and there was cold, snowy winters. On average, we had about 300 inches of snow, which for most of you can't imagine what that looks like. It's a lot. So, residents in the Upper Peninsula had to make tough decisions such as turning their heat on in below freezing temperatures because electricity rates are so high with the fixed prices. So upon moving to Knoxville, I was really thrilled about the opportunity to live in an area that could potentially have lower energy bills, which while a student in the Upper Peninsula, that was accounting for 10 to 15% of my income. So, however, since I've lived in Knoxville, I've realized that there are some similar problems. Utilities implement the fixed fee, and this increases to about roughly 1% each year. So while the electricity rate itself is low, the Knoxville residents' overall bills are still pretty high. And the increase in the fixed fees lead to less incentive for residents and businesses and industries to install, adopt clean energy, and invest in energy efficiency programs. So this also leads to an issue of energy justice. For those that may not be aware of the term, I'm a social scientist, so energy justice is kind of what we discuss. And so it basically requires that all people should have access to reliable, safe, and affordable sources of energy. For residents of Knoxville, as fixed fees continue to rise, more households will be forced to make decisions about how they spend their income, whether it be for electricity, food, or shelter. This is in direct violation of energy justice principles, and residents still have control over their usage and can help reduce their bills through usage reduction behaviors. But the increased fixed fee takes away some of their decision-making power. So I would personally like to see the fixed fee reduced and the increase shifted to the usage. So some of you may be asking, you lived in the UP, part of the reason you had such high bills was because of that high cost of usage price. The difference between the two systems and the reason why I'm advocating for this shift is that in the UP, the time of use rates give power and decision-making to the ratepayers. Some of the cities in the UP have adopted community solar and energy efficiency programs, helping ratepayers reduce their consumption and environmental impacts. And a shift in how the rate increase is applied could move Tennessee in the direction toward legislation and incentives for clean energy production. But more importantly, time of use allows the ratepayer to increase the energy awareness, and you can see actual load reductions and peak reductions, whereas a fixed fee is based on the highest peak consumption. So this is a more practical way because it can accurately reflect the electricity costs and can change consumption behaviors for the consumers. So with that, I want to thank you for the time, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be, I believe it's Bree Kinsley.
Nicely. You're
Nicely.
close. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You're all right. It's a tough one. Yeah, so I don't need to hit a button, y'all do it, right?
No,
Okay. My name's Bree Nisley. I'm a Knoxville resident. I moved here about 2 years ago, so I've been a KUB resident since then. I live at 5316 Pinnacle Drive. Just bought a house in May, so it's pretty cool. I'm also here to talk about fixed fees. Again, I'm not from Tennessee originally. I'm from Southern Ohio. I grew up with a real big family. My dad used to sell mobile homes, and my mom staged them, and that's how she decorated them to be sold, and that's how they met. She already had 2 kids, and then she had 4 with my dad, so there were 6 of us kids. And we were fortunate enough to be able to rent an old farmhouse off of our church. I think my dad paid like $300 a month in rent, and so that's where we lived. It was cheap and affordable for them. Unfortunately, that house was not well insulated or efficient at all. I had no idea what efficiency meant when I was a kid. I just felt what it meant when I was a kid. We had really high electric bills, really high. And so there were times growing up when our electric got shut off, and the kids would go stay with my grandparents sometimes on the weekends or even during the week, because our house just wasn't comfortable to live in during really hot or cold months. And so that was a scary thing that happened. But oftentimes our electric didn't get shut off, and we continued to pay high bills, and we struggled through those months with our comfort levels. I remember times during the summer when my mom would like wet down rags and get them really cold and put them on our ankles and our foreheads so we could sleep at night. There were times in the winter where I got up and I sat, when I was a kid, we would get up and sit on the registers at night to stay warm. And so that had a really huge impact on our quality of life for my siblings and I growing up. Yeah. And so as an adult, I think back to that house that I grew up in, and I wonder how my quality of life, going to school as a kid and hanging out with my friends and not having friends over at times, and just dealing with those comfort issues, how that might have been different if we had had efficiency upgrades to our house. And I think that would have made a really huge impact for us, and I know that those are things that people in Knoxville struggle with and people all over the country struggle with today. And so the reason I'm here to talk about this rate structure is I think that the current rate structure that y'all have with the fixed fees getting higher and higher, and I know that TVA recently approved a rate structure change that they are passing down through local power companies as well that's similar. I think that rate structure stands to raise bills for those who have low energy usage and are on fixed income, but another huge impact of a rate structure like that is that it really reduces the financial incentives of energy efficiency for folks that need to finance those things. It's great that the KEEM program exists and rounded up, that's awesome, but I think there's something like 83,000 households in Knoxville, and so for folks who don't have access to those programs that need to finance energy efficiency, this rate structure could be a make or break factor for whether or not they can afford that financing. And so it's not just about are our average bills as low as they were in 2011, it's also about the comfort and quality of life of people who need energy efficiency. And so, yeah, so I understand that cost recovery is complicated and rate structure is incredibly complicated. I've been reading more about that in the last year, more than I ever wanted to. But I think that these fixed fees, this current rate structure and the increasing fixed fees is just not the way to go. And so I would hope that KUB, I know that KUB values energy efficiency, it's obvious. So I would just ask that you all look into new rate analysis and look at different revisions and different ways of recovering your costs that doesn't increase the fixed fee and reduce the incentives for energy efficiency, because it's really important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bree. Our next speaker is Jennifer Stinnett.
Thank you all for your time. My name is Jennifer Stinnett. I live at 241 Hawthorne Avenue. Been a resident of Tennessee all my life, and I've lived in Knoxville about 8 years. I'm a youth minister at a seminary with the Unitarian Universalist Church, and for part of my training from a Master's of Divinity, I've been part of a program analyzing energy inequity and high fixed fees in some of our most of our poorest neighborhoods in Knoxville, specifically what people would call the Alliance Green Zone between Martin Luther King and Castle, with the Alliance House in East Knoxville. What we found in our survey over the past couple months was inordinately high power bills on average. We surveyed every home in the community with about 100 respondents, and the average bill was about $340. This is a community, largely black community, with fixed incomes, typically for people, and this is a very high, a significantly high portion of their income that is being dedicated towards energy, compared to say like West Knoxville, Barrick, or downtown, where a $300 power bill might be a drop in the bucket. For here, it could be a significant portion of someone's income. Fixed fees only make this problem worse, they compound it. So I often also provide data for this if the board would like that. But we have, so $340 average power bill for these 4 communities. And just the stories from people, the individual narratives, I remember there were 2 houses that had a power bill of over $1,000. Support poor families living in this neighborhood with homes that talked about were not properly weatherized, and there was like this long wait list for the weatherization programs, and these people need justice now, not tomorrow, not in 10 years. They need this today. People are struggling, they're cold, especially as winter comes along. So I just wanted to make you all aware of the way fixed fees could compound these issues further, and hopefully we can develop a nuanced approach to energy justice in our community, a more holistic approach instead of kind of looking at it as though it is one kind of monogamous whole. There's specific communities that are struggling more with energy inequity than other communities. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the folks who have come and spoken to us today. One of the things, I know Jennifer, you were not here at the beginning of the meeting, but we did have some information about the really static price of our bills over a period of time. Our slides are going to be up on our website so that you all can have a chance to, you know, not look at them sideways, which is, I know, kind of difficult. We get to see them straight on. So I would urge you to look at those. Feel free to forward us any correspondence that you would like, and we value your input. Do we have any other business today? If not, our meeting is adjourned. We're going to have a lunch session across the hall that is open to the public. Thank you all.